I've always been a team player. I've always tried to make people understand I'm here to help you. I'm not here to take your client. I'm not trying to steal your client. I'm not, that was never my MO because I knew my safety was in numbers. Like I feel that way with my business too today. It's something that I really believe in. I believe that you need to network and make friends. There's no growth when you stunt your growth by closing your circle. So for me, he called me and said, "Hey, I want to go work with Leah. Can you cover me on Moesha?" And I had gotten into the union at this point. I was the makeup artist on the original Friday with F. Gary Gray, and I department headed that movie. So that movie brought me into the union. And so I was able to do it. And I knew, Brandy coming from music and her mom, Sonia, everybody, they wanted her to have a modern music, cool kind of look, not your traditional classic television makeup artistry that had been going on for years. So I was like the right person to hire.
Oh my gracious.
Even back in high school, Jennifer inspired more than
Cambié la imagen por vender Bitcoin.
Come on, shake your body, baby, do that conga.
Where I want to start with this is, what was the sala like for you? Like, what was the vibes? What novelas were you watching? What music did your family play? Like, who was around? Like, paint me that picture of like the sala vibes.
Right. So I'm Mexican American. I relate to being Chicano because I'm not first generation here. My parents were not immigrants. I was born in the United States and spoke English in my house. So I had a very different, I would say, upbringing. Both of my parents, my father was Portuguese and Irish, and my mother is Mexican. And both of them, being American, were taught to make sure we were American.
Right.
So unfortunately for me, my awareness of being Latina didn't start from birth. My parents moved us to a very white community, and that's where I learned I was Latina.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I didn't really know what that meant because I thought I was just like everybody else, But it's an awareness. I think that word is like, we're going to use that a lot,
that's
right?
the key word.
It's like, it's an awareness. When I became aware that I was different, then I was able to sit back and look at my sala and look at my mother, my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles, our traditions, our food, and everything, and realize, oh, this isn't like everybody else. Everybody loved our food. Everybody wanted to come over. Everybody wanted my mom to cook.
Right.
Everybody wanted my grandma to cook. Everybody wanted, all of the Mexican benefits, let's say. But I didn't realize it was because they were different. I just thought everybody loved it.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So.
But what about like school for you? Like, what was that like? And who were some of your friends? Like, I'm sure this conversation had to come up. Like, what are you? Or I'm sure they probably looked at you and said, "Hey,
that has
and what's your ethnicity?"
Yeah, I'm sure for you too. Yeah. That has been a lifelong question that I became very good at answering. People would always say, "Rianne, where are you from? Where are you?" And it was always because there was nobody else like me around, right? So my parents did a really good job of separating me early on in life.
Right.
And I think, listen, my dad would always tell me, your job is to do better than we did. So I know he wanted to do better than what his experience was. So for him, that meant, having a decent, reliable job, making an income, moving your family to a safe place. You know, we lived out kind of in the country in an area that was being developed at the time. It's a very big and developed area now called Westlake Village in California, but we were literally the first house on the first street of Westlake Village. Now, if you know anything about this area, you would be like, wow, that's crazy, because there's literally like 1 million people out there now. But this was like 1967, you know. I mean, I was just going to kindergarten in a trailer, and literally the people that lived around me were all young families that were doing the same thing, only they were white. And my father, because he was part Irish, he looked white. My mother just looked like this cute, exotic little lady, you know. And then there was me, and everybody, they would look at my parents, they would look at me, and then they would see us living in this area, and that would be the question: what are you? What are you? So I had to think about it from a very young age, and I had it down. I'm Mexican, Indian, Portuguese, and Irish. That would be what I would say. And then I would wait for their eyes to grow really big and be like, wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. And I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
You know, and that would be the mantra: Mexican, Indian, Spanish, Portuguese, and Irish. And it wasn't until I was, I would say, more of an adult that I was actually able to kind of embrace, in a way, how unique that was of an environment for someone like myself. There were things along the way that always made me aware that I was different. But it wasn't until I was like a young adult that I really, really understood the beauty and the benefits of being Latina.
You know what's so crazy? I often get asked, like, what's my preparation for interviews, right? And I always say the same thing. I always have my answer for that. But I always say I only interview up until a certain point, just because I want to keep the conversation very organic, and I want to know and learn the way my audience is learning at the same time. And so I always have that rule, no matter what. I'll only research up until a certain point. When I did my research on you, I couldn't stop. I could not stop.
Really?
Because I wanted to know more and more. And like, what, like, so here's my key. This is my awareness about you.
Okay.
You have a confidence in you. I don't even know where, I'm sure we're going to get into like where that comes from and things like that. But there is a confidence. It's very calm, but very direct. For me, I would say you're a sharpshooter. I could be wrong, but that's like the vibes that you give me. It seems like you just never stopped. It seems like you just kept going. Like no was not something that existed in your vocabulary at all. That's like number two. And then the third awareness, and I don't know if this kind of stems maybe from your childhood or why, and we'll get into it, but the ownership part really fascinated me about you as to why you decided, hey, I'm just going to own 100% of this. I'm not going to fold in this sense. And so I'm so glad that you're sitting with me now, because I just feel like, you know, when you just want to pick someone's brain and you just want to be like, I have all these questions.
Pick my brain. I'm here to be picked.
So I want to thank you so much. Rianne Silva, CEO of Beauty Blender. This is an honor for me, so I'm super grateful, and I really want to thank you for this opportunity. I guess in understanding the business, I think it's important for us to understand who in your early life kind of had this business mindset where you kind of picked things up along the way and said, okay, I can do this on my own. So where did you see business as an introduction in your life?
So I would say that it was both of my parents.
Okay.
But they kind of had different talents, right? So they were both hard workers. My dad was a talented car mechanic, car racer, boat racer, motocross racer, like anything with an engine, right?
Right.
And he, he excelled at that and was very meticulous about that. And so I watched him, and he also taught me to be meticulous in that way too. My mother was sheer force. Like, she just worked. And not because, like, I don't want to say not because she, had to. My dad definitely, wanted to provide for us, although it's so funny. Hindsight is 2020 now. When I hear her talk about it, she's like, "Oh, your dad, he didn't do anything. I did it. I did it all." Right,
Right.
No, but she worked, and she worked hard, and she was pretty, and she's still with us. Innovative in the way she thought, and I think it was really just honestly the blend of the two of them that I watched and kind of just taught me how to be independent. As my story unfolds, and maybe I'll talk about it more. There was a time though that, like you, they couldn't support me. I mean, my family was not wealthy. My father was a mechanic. My mother was a waitress, but they lived like I never knew that we weren't rich.
Right.
I felt like, hey, we
Right.
pretty much have everything until horses came in my life. Then I realized I wasn't rich because we couldn't have horses.
Right.
But
Right.
I mean, who can? Who can
Yeah.
afford horses? Even to this day, I'm like, one day I want to retire so I can have horses. I'm like, how am I going to do that?
Right.
But no, it was really both my parents. But I would say really honestly, Ali, I would lean more towards my mom at this point. I don't want to not give my dad credit because he was there for the meticulous part of it. But, like very like anal, like
Right.
everything had to be just so almost like OCD. And my mom was just kind of like, get it done.
So she was like the powerhouse. She was the breadwinner. She was the one.
Really creative.
Okay.
Yeah, like she was doing interior design miracles in our house. Like,
I love that. I love that.
I mean, with no money, but that's what I'm saying. Like I would never know that.
So was your creativity from her?
Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now,
and that can do, like, there was nothing like when she puts her mind to something, she's pretty stubborn.
right.
When she puts her mind to something, she's like a bulldog. She gets it done. Yeah. And I learned that from her in many different ways.
I was going to ask you, like, what did she create that you were like, oh my God, like, did she really just do that?
Like, literally, like, I think she, this is, obviously I'm much older than you. And so there was no internet, there was no reference, there was no way to really, fill your life with newness like we do now, right? So there were magazines and maybe some TV shows, and she would look at, lifestyles and the way people lived. And she would literally, for example, she took a resin sculpture class when I was a kid and started making all these little resin balls and beads, and like she ended up making these window coverings that just were like floating jewels, and just like she would do all these really creative, wild things that she would make all of our clothes. Like she would literally, I was like the best dressed kid, but it was everything she made. Like she would get patterns
custom,
and just
baby.
show. Yeah, she would make our
custom.
clothes. She would decorate our homes, and then she cooked. She was like I said, everybody in the neighborhood wanted to come to our house at Christmas to have enchiladas and tamales and tacos and beans and rice and chili verde and all the things that she made. And I just, but she wasn't exclusive to just making Mexican food. Like she would then make French food. Then
she was Superwoman. Your mom was Superwoman.
Yeah, she was just very aware and curious and interested, and really, I think she has such a drive to do more than what she felt she came from. Trying to improve where we come from, right? To do more.
I love that. When were, I guess, your awareness, right, of you being a one of one? Because I hope you know that you are a one of one.
What does that mean?
A one of one to me, my definition is, and I'll just take a Jay-Z line because he's one of my favorite rappers, but there's none before you and there's none to come. Like, you own this space that you're in. No one has ever done it before you. Like you are a part of evolution. And God forbid whatever happens, God forbid, there will never be another you, another beauty blender. There's a lot of knockoffs, but it's never.
My fans. No.
Yes.
No, thank you for that. Wow. Honestly, I guess I've been so busy working the last 20 years just on Beauty Blender. I had a whole career as a makeup artist before that. The 50 years of hip hop just went by last week, and I thought about how much of that world I contributed to as a makeup artist because I was Latina, because I was a woman of color, and because there were so many reasons.
We have to get into all that.
Yeah,
by
so
the
many
way.
reasons, that I was only given the people of color jobs and not the white actors that had budget jobs. Like there's all that. But as I look back and reflect recently, really, and I would say in the last year, Ali, I've really started to recognize some of the firsts and the things that I've done. Of course, I know Beauty Blender as a category creator. I had to figure out how to make it. I mean, that's when there's nothing out there. You have to invent a way to make it. I knew that, but I guess I just never I never looked at myself that way,
Really?
honestly, because you told me when we started this conversation that I have a certain confidence, but I think I have a certain measurement more than confidence. I believe I do have confidence, but I do believe I also have a lot of insecurities. And it's those insecurities that propel me to do the work I've done and try to be the best at what I've done so that I can, at this moment in time, reflect and go, wow, I'm a one of one. Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's so circular. I never really think about it.
I feel like confidence, because it takes confidence to invent something, right? It takes confidence to go from, I like makeup, to, okay, this is what's missing.
I think it takes ignorance, honestly.
It takes audacity, for
It
sure.
does. I think being naive is almost a benefit in some ways to the creation of something. Like, I felt like because I needed this, and Beauty Blender was the first high definition makeup tool created for makeup artists to use while shooting high definition film, because that's what I was hired to do and had to solve the issues of looking natural. So when I did that, I knew, my God, if this works for me, it's going to work for other makeup artists. And we're all moving in this direction. So I knew I had a passion that, oh my God, I'll be able to pay for my daughter's private school.
But even before that, let's take it like all the way back before we get there.
Okay.
Let's take it to, okay, you loved makeup, right? Like, it's safe to say. That was like,
I loved fashion.
Okay, you loved fashion. So then how did you transition now into makeup?
So I went to FIDM for fashion design because I loved fashion. And that was my mother's vision too, because, we were talking earlier about money management a little bit and how, your relationship with money and my relationship with money. And I told you, look, it's not that unique. Like, I don't think I came from a family that didn't teach me how to balance a checkbook. I didn't know how to write a check. I didn't know about credit. I didn't know about college. I didn't know about any of those things because my parents knew they couldn't afford to send me, and they were products of those environments. So they didn't even know how to get me there,
Right.
So it was like all these things you figure out on your own. But so I think experience and just living your life is, and being naive, like I said, gives you the passion. Once you find or recognize the one thing that you think, I can do this and I can get this done and I know how to do it, the rest of the job is just convincing people to get on the train with you. So that's kind of how that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because I had a certain background that was unique, I was able to convince people to at least take a chance.
Right. But okay, so now let's break this down. I have to break this down. So you go to school for fashion. What do you find out there in terms of like, because there is a transition that's happening. So while you're in school, what is that like? Where did that awareness come from of like, okay, now I want to do this? Like, break that down for me, that period that you were in school.
So I was a young woman of maybe 17 years old, living in downtown Los Angeles, going to FIDM, thinking I wanted to be in fashion. Quickly realized that the business of fashion I was not going to be good at. I'm not good at mathematics, not good at pattern making and grading.
Right.
And, at the time, I should say, at that time, I didn't feel confident that those were my talents, right? But what I was good at was drawing and illustration. And I had a flair for art, and I could look at something and translate it through sketching or any of the mediums there. So I quickly went from fashion design to fashion illustration. And because I needed to work, I got a job at a local department store at the time that's no longer in existence called Robinson's. And I, entry level position, they hired me to be a perfume model where you literally, I guess they liked the way I looked, so they put you in some clothes and you walk around and you spray people and you promote the fragrance of that month or that week. And I realized, like, wow, this is really not a good way to meet people because nobody wants you to spray them with perfume. Nobody. They just, like, they won't make eye contact. They just walk by you and, whatever. The kind of weird guys, they'll look at you and kind of like, they're kind of weird, you know. They'll look at you in a weird way.
Right.
But I quickly became friends with the girls in the cosmetic department, and they looked like they had really great jobs. And I'm like, I can do makeup. I could do what they're doing to someone that comes to the counter. And, but again, being naive, ignorance is bliss sometimes. I didn't know the back end of that retail environment, like the selling and all of the stuff that had to happen in order to be successful in that position. So I quickly did learn, and that was my transition into makeup. And then living in Los Angeles, being a student, meeting all kinds of people in the entertainment industry, just simply because you're in LA, going to clubs and meeting, with your school friends and whatever. I ended up meeting a couple actual professional makeup artists that did film and television, and they were the ones that introduced me to this possibility of not just working retail, but actually working on a set and working with actors. And I thought that was a lot more interesting and really fun, you know. So that's pretty much how my awareness from, using makeup as just a way to feed myself, literally, to looking at this as a career. Like, there's a path here that I find really interesting. And, there's great benefits. If you're a makeup artist that works on film and television, eventually you get invited to be in our union where you get benefits, you get insurance and retirement, and there's people that protect you and make sure you're not taken advantage of, and like all these things, right? So that was my goal. That was my path.
What was the first set that you worked on?
The first set I worked on, oh my God. I mean, I worked. Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's amazing because the people just don't even. I mean, like, it just doesn't exist. It was like that glam rock kind of like. I think I did an album cover with some glam rock band that had hair like 5 feet high, and they were like eyeliner and lipstick, glam rock. It was so so far out of anything that I knew, but somehow I was able to like pull it out and make it happen. And, I don't even remember the name of the band, but that was the first thing. And then, my social life, I will say, I met a lot of people that were willing to take a chance on me. And I met some photographers along the way, some, different managers, PR people that I'm sure they looked at me and said, well, at the bare minimum, I won't have to pay her very much.
Right.
And she'll get the job done, as opposed to having to pay someone with a lot of background and reputation and resume. So I was able to really take advantage of understanding that. So I made sure that, my talent, my art, my skill was going to be a benefit to them. Like, you don't have to pay me as much. But I knew I was building my resume.
Right.
So my resume, even though I wasn't getting paid a lot, I was building a resume. And that resume was going to get me paid eventually.
Were you still doing both? Like, were you still doing perfume as well as being on set? Or did you eventually just leave that one and say, okay, I'm going to do set full time?
Yeah, no, I ended up just doing cosmetics.
Okay.
But not for very long. I mean, I actually had a whole other left turn in my life that happened.
Really?
And I didn't get back to makeup for a couple years.
Can you speak about that?
Yeah, I fell in love, Yeah, I met a guy, and actually I met a couple guys, if I have to be honest.
Right.
I met one guy that was from another country and really wealthy, young. He was young like me, that just like I traveled around Europe and had a great like odyssey, amazing time. Realized that it wasn't really going to be real for me. Like,
Okay.
I was never going to be Mrs. whoever that is, or
Right.
that wasn't going to be my lifestyle, right? This is when you realize, oh, I'm Latina.
That's when you caught that awareness.
This is when you're like, the awareness, right? Like, I'm Latina, and I need to
Yeah.
come back to America. I need to,
Right.
like, I need to figure out what the hell I'm going to do. So, little distraction there. And then when I came back, I actually met my daughter Erica's father, and he was in the NFL. He was playing football. And I thought I was going to be like an NFL wife. And just, I didn't think about makeup. I was great at makeup. I looked really great.
Right.
And I could do all my friends when we'd go out. We would all like do each other's makeup and get ready. Oh my God, we used to go out at like midnight. Like I'm in bed at 9 now. Like I think about that and I'm like, oh my God, I would just be going out right now.
I know. That's literally my life.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm such a bore because I go to sleep early all the time.
I just think it was the age and the time. But yeah, and then that relationship, again, left turn. It didn't pan out the way I planned it. Life is full of like
awarenesses.
A lot of turns and new awarenesses.
But let me ask you: do you feel like you couldn't have both? Like, do you feel like you couldn't be in love and pursue this career? Like, or was it something where you was just like, I just want to be in love?
So there was the first relationship. No,
okay,
no, that wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
With my daughter's father, yeah, sure. But I think I was traumatized from the first relationship, going into that relationship, and kind of like, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do because, Erica came along, and then I was pregnant, and, we're in a much different time now. Being pregnant and working, I did work as a makeup artist while I was pregnant with her for a very long time. But it just like, it didn't really hit me until I became single. And I was like, okay, what are you going to do? You have a baby. You've got this guy. He's set. He's got his career and he's, making tons of money as an athlete, but he's not trying to give it to you.
Right.
And he's doing everything in his power not to give it to you. And you know what? That's okay. I'll take what I can get, but I don't need it because I'm going to build my own career. And that's really where I begrudgingly needed to take the money from him, but I did not want it because it came with such poison. I didn't want that in my life. And so it was kind of what propelled me to create and carve out a career in makeup artistry for myself.
So that was
That's when I came back to makeup.
right. So that was like the push of like saying, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Okay. So now getting back into it, what did that feel like? Did you feel like some time was lost? Maybe I'm lost here. I don't know what to do in terms of like, because makeup, when you say makeup, it could be, there's so many jobs, right? Like you can freelance, you can work at, some people just work at like MAC or Sephora, or, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh, that didn't exist.
well, back then it didn't.
Yeah, no. I was focused on entertainment. I was
Okay.
in Hollywood.
Okay.
And it was the MTV revolution. So music video was a very unique medium at the time that you didn't have to be in the union, but you got production experience. You got to work in film without being on a film.
Okay.
So, and you got a lot of creative freedom. So I did like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of video where I did a lot of like really crazy wild makeups, and then I did some really boring, like just put some lip gloss on.
Yeah.
You know.
But
Like,
how'd you get these jobs? Like, was it like people referring you? Was it like, were you pitching these jobs out?
360. It was
Yeah.
all of that.
Okay.
It was people referring me. It was me, being ballsy enough and showing up at a production company with my resume and my book and my, I had edited a little, like, little videotape of my work together, to show them what I could do. And then, listen, I was like, I'll do it cheaper. Like I'm not proud to say, but I would undercut to get the work,
Yeah. I mean,
then,
look where it led you.
yeah,
Like,
I would, because I knew that the body of work was the important thing,
Okay.
right? And if I could work with the best DPs, the director of photographies, the best directors and the best talent, the best wardrobe stylists and the best hairdressers, that just like, it's a team. Everybody creates the vision. And the better the sets, the better the work, the more money would come. So I would find word of mouth. I would go to production companies. I would meet people in LA. At this point, I had met so many people, being with Erica's dad and meeting other people. My other relationship, I met many people from around the world that would come to LA, and it was just, I can't even tell you, like, it was just networking. I would just meet a lot of people. I don't know.
The reason why I ask is because so many people feel like what they're lacking is the access. Like, how do I get in? Right? Like for me, I had access at a very young age because I was going to nightclubs and I was working that industry. I was actually working the doors of the nightclubs. And I was meeting, the nightclubs I was working was like the best hip hop party that we're talking about, and Kiss and Fly and Greenhouse and all these there were like these big industry events. That's where I met a lot of my connects that then provided me the access. So once I knew in my mind,
it's such a benefit to be a woman too. I just have to say,
it is.
I think there's a men's network 100%, but I think women, if you're smart, you can utilize these contacts in ways that a bro can't.
You're
you
right.
know what I mean? Like,
You're right about that.
And that's the same thing that happened to me. I met all kinds of different people, but it's really convincing them to take a chance on you.
Right.
Because it's not just like a kiss and tell, right? Like you actually have to produce. You have to be good. If you're a makeup artist and they're spending sometimes hundreds of thousands. I did $1 million videos. Like, they're spending tons of money on you. You better know what you're doing.
You better know your at that point, because could you imagine someone refers you and then like the work is like not good?
Oh, I it's happened to me where I've brought people on my team because I'm getting a referral and they're not good. So then I'm having to double work, right?
Right.
So so it's very important.
Let's talk about, and I'm trying to like, because I know your time is limited as well. So I'm trying, and you have like so much like cool shit going on. So let's talk about the set of Girlfriends. How did you get there? That's why I framed the question of like the access, because I'm just trying to figure out like, well, how'd she get there? Like that's such
Brandy.
Nice.
Brandy Norwood.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and really, it was my friend Christopher, rest in peace. He passed away in Aaliyah's plane that went down. But Chris was doing Brandy, And, I was like the queen of music videos at the time. And he had just done Brandy for Cinderella. And, here's the thing. When you work with anybody, whether it's a celebrity or just anybody, over a long period of time, sometimes you just need like a little break, right? Chris had the opportunity to work with Aaliyah, and he needed to entrust Brandy with someone that he knew he could come back to Brandy with, right? And I've always been a team player. I've always tried to make people understand I'm here to help you. I'm not here to take your client. I'm not trying to steal your client. I'm not, that was never my MO, because I knew my safety was in numbers. Like I feel that way with my business too today. It's something that I really believe in. I believe that you need to network and make friends. There's no growth when you stunt your growth by closing your circle. So for me, he called me and said, "Hey, I want to go work with Aaliyah. Can you cover me on Moesha?" And I had gotten into the union at this point. I was the makeup artist on the original Friday with F. Gary Gray, and I department headed that movie. So that movie brought me into the union. And so I was able to do it. And I knew, Brandy coming from music and her mom, Sonia, everybody, they wanted her to have a modern music, cool kind of look, not your traditional classic television makeup artistry that had been going on for years. So I was like the right person to hire. There was a writer and a producer on that show named Mara Akil Brock. And when I went to work on Moesha for years and years, Chris ended up passing away. He ended up working with Aaliyah, and I ended up staying with Brandy because he was gone.
Right.
And Mara ended up getting a production deal with Kelsey Grammer, and that was Girlfriends. That was her show. And so I wasn't the original makeup artist on Girlfriends. A friend of mine was. And I was then working still with Brandy. And my friend who got the job on Girlfriends, because you make friends, right? So all your friends are working. When she got pregnant, she couldn't continue working because she was going to have the baby, right? I mean, she worked until she was very pregnant. So I took over from her then. And I just stayed on because she didn't want to come back. She stayed, with her child for the next season or whatever, and then she moved on to another show. But that's how I got the job on Girlfriends. And Girlfriends at the time was a really unique project because it was the first show being shot in high definition video and being broadcast that way too. So I always tell the story because I think it's really true. Like ABC, CBS, NBC, they weren't going to take the chance on high definition. It was kind of like, let me do it on the Black Show. Let's try it on the Black Show, or let's try it on these other kind of programs that
let's see if it works.
That
here
may not
first.
last too long anyway. Laugh on everybody because like it's not only has Girlfriends it's still out there. It just keeps like reincarnating itself. But high definition became the way for everybody, whether it was your camera, your TV, your filming movies, everything. So that's, when you asked me about Beauty Blender, I knew that this was the direction that production was going in. And I knew that there was a type of makeup artistry that my television brothers and sisters had been doing for a long time, and that needed to change. But we're all creatures of habit. And when you're under pressure, like when you're under pressure to deliver a look on a network show, and you have producers and writers and directors and PR people and managers and all these people looking at your work saying, she doesn't look great. I don't know, she could look different. Or what did you do different this time? Like Beauty Blender was a way to kind of democratize that makeup application. Everybody, as long as you could bounce the sponge on your face with makeup, the makeup all looked the same. And I thought, oh my God, if I could just get other makeup artists to understand that it works, I'm golden. And so was my goal, to just get it in the hands of other makeup artists. And that's how it all happened on Girlfriends. That's how it happened.
Has it ever occurred to you, and I'm just asking because I'm listening to the journey, how much of timing, like the concept of time, because I feel like, yes, you had the skills, yes, you had the determination, but you were also like in the right place
I was
at
in
the
a
right
sweet spot.
time.
Oh my God. I was
Like the timing of the way everything happened really worked in your favor. Like, I don't know what deal you struck up with God, but he was definitely...
God is definitely my friend.
Yeah. Yes. You and him are tight. You guys are super tight.
We're real tight.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we
can
are. He
tell.
likes me. I like him a lot.
Yes, I can
Yeah, and I
tell.
like her too.
Yeah.
I think she might be a girl. I don't know.
Yeah.
But no, timing, Ali, is everything. And I say this all the time because people look at me sometimes and be like, "How did you do this?" And it was like, it was a moment in time. Like, we didn't have the kind of social platforms now that really isolate us in a lot of ways. We had to go out and socialize. We had to meet people. We had to learn to not be socially awkward. We had to learn how to talk to people.
That's right.
We had to learn to look you in the eye. We had to learn to convince you. We had to do these things. And then the timing of MTV and non-union versus union, getting production experience, meeting photographers, digital world coming in, high def.
Crazy.
I mean, really, honestly, and then being in California, I mean, I would love to sit here and just, sit here and listen to you praise me and say, oh, you're so smart. You did these things. It's so amazing. I want to pick your brain. But literally, you hit the nail on the head. I was so lucky, and it was timing, and I just seized the moment. Being able, I think my talent is being able to recognize where I'm at when I'm there and what I need to do to maximize whatever that is I'm trying to do. And that's what I do. I'm also really clear about the things I don't know and I'm not good at, and then I find people that are good at those things to help me.
There's so much I want to unpack here. So you're on the set of Girlfriends, and you decide, I'm just going to cut up these sponges.
Yeah.
Like what? Like
so let's back that up. Let's back up for a second. So, in beauty, right, and in filmmaking, you have hairdressers and you have makeup artists.
Right.
Now, the makeup artists were always the men, and the hairdressers were always the women. And that's why the makeup artists made more than the women. Just a little fact.
Okay.
It's changed now, but it took years for us to change that, because makeup artists would make more than hairdressers because they were always men.
Okay.
Men's hands are, for the most part, bigger than women's hands, right?
Right.
And when you do makeup, so Max Factor specifically was the first makeup artist to use a sponge, like a deliberate sponge, to apply makeup. And it was a pancake water activated makeup. It was like a dry powder that you would use a wet sponge and then you would
and then
put on the
pat
face.
it. Okay.
So that was kind of like how sponges became a tool.
Okay.
And they were always cut. It wasn't until much later that they became manufactured and they were cut into little wedges, right? And if you think about a wedge, you think about like pouring foam into like a cylinder, okay? Then turn that cylinder on the side and slice it like bread. Then you've got like pizza slices. And then if you cut them like a pizza, then you have wedges, right? It's the cheapest way to provide a tool that was never designed to put makeup on your face, right? So I would sit there on the set and play with the sponges. Now, and I think it's really important and fair for me to say, I didn't create the makeup sponge, right? What I created was a way to mimic an airbrush application of makeup. So when you talk about high definition and back in the day and the timing of it all, somebody somewhere, I don't know who it was, but somebody told the producer, director, writer manager, publicist, agent, everybody over there at Paramount
Yes.
Girlfriends. The only way to do this makeup and make it look natural for these 4 beautiful Black women that we want them to look natural. We don't want them to look like they're wearing makeup, but we know they have to wear makeup.
Right.
We need to airbrush them. Like, it was like, from the top down. They decided they needed to find somebody that knew how to airbrush.
You were the
That
one.
was me.
Yeah.
I was one of the only airbrushers
One
that
of
did
one.
beauty makeup.
Yeah.
There were a lot of monster makeup effects makeup artists that did a lot of airbrushing for appliance work when you do prosthetics and that kind of stuff. But not anybody that really did beauty work. And I would take makeup and thin it out and blow it through my airbrusher because of music video.
Right.
Like all
right.
that I was able to take all of that experience and ball it all up into this moment of being on Girlfriends and using the same thought process. Okay, they want them to look natural and they think they want to airbrush. But the problem is airbrushers are really loud.
Yes.
And when you're on set and you're rolling sound, hey, sound man, you can't be having a compressor off set on the side of the stage at your touch up. Like you can't be airbrushing people. So what cutting these sponges did when you took the edges off of the sponge and you wet them, it was like airbrushing. And so I don't know how I got into a whole tangent about that, but
love this.
That's how it
this.
happened. That's so yes, we would sit on the side of the stage. Because as a makeup artist, you sit around more than you
what else
like.
do
You do.
You might as well
You're
do.
waiting for touch-ups. You're waiting
Right.
for a scene change or makeup change or wardrobe
Right.
change or whatever. We would just cut sponges for the next day, and then I was like, okay, on my hiatus, I need to figure out how to make these things because I can't be sitting here cutting these sponges with cuticle scissors all day long.
Right.
I need my coffee and donuts. Yeah.
So you figured out that there was a need for this.
Yeah.
And what point in your mind you're like, let me turn this into a business now. Let me figure this out. Like, when did that click for you?
Well, I was pretty business-minded anyway. I had prototypes for brush rolls. Like I was seriously, when I tell you I did not want to take that man's money, I was trying to find a way to never have to
Any
depend.
means necessary.
I never wanted to depend on a man ever. It's the worst feeling ever. And it was designed to make me feel really bad. And it did. It worked. And I never, I was very industrious. I had, prior to Beauty Blender, created these really beautiful, wild-looking makeup brush rolls. I was all about the set, the kit. Like I was like when I said my dad was meticulous, that's where I became meticulous. When I would make my kit and the way that I would pack my kit and the way I would store my makeup and be able, I had 57,000 everythings in my kit, but I mean, literally, I used to call it like dragging my dead body around because it'd be like carrying so much
you
stuff.
had some shit
so
in there.
so I would try to reduce and figure out ways to do things. So the brush roll was the first thing, and then Beauty Blender was the second thing. And I just, I knew I wanted to have a form of I laugh because it's so not passive. But what I thought was I wanted a form of passive income. So
not passive.
So it's so not passive.
Yeah.
But what I thought was I can make money while I'm sitting on the set making money.
Right.
So that was, for
Right.
me, and that was freedom because I wanted the best for my daughter. I wanted her to go to private school. People used to, because I knew there were things that I didn't, when we talk about our relationship with money, there were things that my parents didn't teach me that I wanted to make sure she knew. And I couldn't teach her because I was just still trying to figure it out myself. But I knew more money was more money and more money was more opportunity and more freedom. And so more is more. I was trying to make
That's
more.
what I always say, because, money is all relative. But for me, I feel like money is access.
Money's freedom.
Money is freedom.
Yeah. Money is
It's
freedom.
freedom. But when you say passive and when you say, hey, I can be on
To
set.
a point.
To a
but
point,
then money
right?
can control you too. So there's a
But that's the
balance
thing,
there.
because
Yeah.
if you're in your mind saying, well, hey, I could be on set and also have this, but then now this business is like booming, like it's doing amazing. How can you then be at two places at once when you're trying to oversee the
a good-
operations of the business?
That's a good question. That's what one of my vendors asked me. Well, how are you going to still do makeup? You know, because I did makeup 9 years into Beauty Blender. I was still on set. I remember I would show up on set and people like Sam Fine would be like, "Girl, what are you doing here?
Like,
What
why
do
are you
why are
here?
you here?" I'm like, "Cause I'm a makeup artist. That's what I do." And they just roll their eyes.
But do you feel like to a certain extent, maybe you were like, I don't know, like maybe were you like scared of like quitting that part and just going full for it? Were you?
Yeah.
Why? You had such a sure thing. I mean, it's a sure thing.
I don't know. Are there sure things?
This is a sure thing.
Hmm.
There's only a few sure things in life. Beauty Blender is a sure thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding
Do
you.
you not
I
see
don't.
this?
No, I don't think it's a sure thing. I think it can
Rian,
all
do you
fall
not
tomorrow.
see everybody that has imitated what you have built? Like, you've seen
But
this,
that's
right?
why it's not a sure thing. Do you see that?
But the reason why I say it's a sure thing is because although you have different variations of this, you know how they say, like, when you break up with someone and you're like, he's coming back. I know he's coming back. They always come back. It's almost like that. It's like they're gonna come back. I mean, I'm sure in that process when you first see it, you're like, okay, well,
Yeah.
I'm not sure how this is gonna go.
That
but
is the dream. And that is what I go with. But I spend most of my time now making sure that people remember and recognize that Beauty Blender is the original and that we did create the category that allows all these other ones to exist. But that's a big job. You know, I mean, I appreciate that you say it's a sure thing because it lets me know I'm doing my job.
Sure.
But let me tell you,
100%.
it's not. I mean, because nothing, and you know, and again, I guess it goes back to your original opening statement about confidence. You know, I don't know that I have confidence as much as I know what I know. And what I know is that there is no sure thing. And, you know, it's only a sure thing as long as you're willing to partake in it. So when I'm out of Beauty Blender, then I won't worry about it anymore. But while I'm in it, I'm worrying about it all the time.
Right.
I'm making
right.
sure that it's front and center, that it's number one, that it's the original, that people understand it's pink, and when you see it, and I do have other colors, but you know that's the original OG, and people know that. You know that is my job, and that I'm a makeup artist, and I have an amazing complexion brand at Sephora. You know, I mean, that is my job, and there is nothing sure about any of that. And your vendors and your retailers will make you understand very clearly, oh yeah, you're great, but you're not really like Selena. You're not really like Mario. You're not really like Pat. You're not really like, you know, I can go on and on because
But then how do you navigate through that space?
Well, you have to clear all the noise away.
Like, how do you drown out that noise?
You got to clear all the noise away and stay focused on what you're doing because they're there to remind you that these other things are out there, right? And you know, that awareness can make you insecure, right? So you have to just focus on what you're doing. And I have to always remember that I have this unique experience in my own makeup artistry background that none of them have. And that's my voice. They all have different, like, you know, Mario has the master class in the Kardashians.
Right.
You know, Pat had fashion weeks. Charlotte fashion weeks. Selena, you know, she's a celebrity. Rihanna, she's a celebrity. I mean, there's celebrity brands that do great because they hire great people and they're celebrities. They have tons of connections, right? Their social media is ridiculous. You just have to know your lane, you know? And
Very
for
true.
me,
Very
I
true.
know that my experience as a makeup artist is so deep. and there's nothing that I haven't had to figure out within makeup artistry, whether it's effects, whether it's beauty, whether it's red carpet, whether it's, commercials, whether it's funerals, porn. I mean, it's just, there's nothing I haven't done.
Yeah.
And I know that. So you have to know what you know.
That's what I'm saying. That's where I feel the confidence comes from.
Yeah, but
The reason why
there's
I
no
say
sure
that-
thing though.
You're right. And you know what? You are right. There's
There is
no
no
sure
sure
thing.
thing.
There's no sure thing.
And there's danger in thinking that.
You are right about that. But the reason why I do stand behind the confidence is because if your statement right now is, if you know what you know, and that still stands true for you, you were never indecisive about it. And I think that's people's downfall in business. When you become indecisive, when you feel like, should I? I don't know. What do you think? And you start getting a bunch of opinions. That's when
That's when your motivation is in the wrong place. So what I mean by that is like when you're clear about what you're doing and why you're doing it, then you can make clear decisions.
Right.
But if you're kind of doing it because you just want to make some money, or you're kind of doing it because it's kind of trending and maybe I have an opportunity to, or maybe I just want to be famous, maybe I just want attention, I want people to know who I am. Like all those things can be a part of why maybe you do something, but they can't be your driving force because they'll make you undecisive.
Right.
Because but if you're very clear, like I knew Beauty Blender was a high definition tool that other makeup artists were going to need. Like I was clear on that.
Right.
So every decision I made about that, developing Beauty Blender, was with that in mind. But I see people like, I just need to have a product. I just need, and then they're kind of just trying to pull things out of the air. Like, no, you have to be very clear about what your intentions are.
What about the intention behind still being full owner and owning 100% of the business? Why not, partner with investors, and why not give up equity in that sense?
Because I didn't know about it.
Okay.
The relationship with money again, right? Like I'm not a business person. I don't know about investment partners and transactions and all that kind of stuff. I do now. But at the time where I could have gotten like a whole bunch of money for Beauty Blender, like say in like 17, I was having too much fun. Like I didn't want to invite someone in. I was printing money. Why am I going to invite someone in that's going to tell me I'm not doing a good job, or try to, or I didn't know. Like, the beauty of what I know now is that it's like a marriage. You find the right partner for yourself. I have so many friends that have entered into bad marriages in their business partners. And so I'm very aware of that. And that, that in part is also why, I'm still 100% owner. Plus right now, I don't think it's a great time to be selling businesses right now. I think it's kind of like Hunger Games out there right now. But I will say, like, after 20 years, I am finally starting to understand why a person would exit, and I'm not saying I'm ready for that at all, but like I couldn't even see the pinhole at the tunnel at the end of the light, like over there.
Right.
Like I really, I was building my business. I didn't know if it was going to be a legacy business that I would leave for my family. I needed to see what my kids were going to do. Like I said, I was still having fun with it, and I had so many things I wanted to do with it yet, So I feel like when you start bringing in partners, you're kind of plotting your exit, right? And I wasn't ready to exit.
I absolutely love it. What, in all the years, and the experience and the wisdom that you've gained, what would you say is the biggest truth in entrepreneurship, and also the biggest lie in entrepreneurship?
I would say The biggest truth is that you really are out there on your own. You know, if you're a true entrepreneur, you're like on a trapeze swinging and you let go of that bar and you're trying to grab the next bar. And you have that moment where you're just like, okay, am I going to be able to grab that bar? Okay, got the bar. That's entrepreneurship every day, making those decisions that, you're just trying to make the next move and the next connection.
And the biggest lie.
The biggest lie is maybe that it gives you freedom. Like, I think a lot of people like the word entrepreneur because to them it represents that they don't have to work for somebody. Oh, but you're working. And you're working maybe not for somebody, but you're working for something. I work for a little egg-shaped sponge. Mm-hmm. She dictates everything to me. She can be she can be hard.
Yes.
She can be sweet and cuddly, but you create your monster. You know what I mean? It's like, I think the biggest lie is that, you feel like you're free. There's no freedom in, holding the world on your shoulders. It's a big job.
What are you most afraid of in this journey?
That all of my hard labor, I'll end up with nothing.
Really?
Yeah. I still feel that way. Yeah.
It sounds like it's so crazy to me. It's really bizarre, but it sounds
I don't lay awake at night worrying about it, but that is my biggest fear. Like, what if all of this work I did for all these years really meant nothing? And it's more than the money. It's like meaning nothing, It didn't do anything. Now I know what I've done. Okay. Right. And I'm really proud of it. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. I'm just being real with you.
Yeah.
Just because you're successful doesn't mean you don't think about these things anymore. Mm-hmm. Couldn't be further from the truth. Mm-hmm. Unless, I don't know. I don't even know people. Every entrepreneur and successful person I know still, you think the same way. It's just you've gotten to a different place, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I know what I've done. Beauty Blenders in the Smithsonian. I'm in the Hall of Fame of, I've just won my 15th Best of Beauty Award from Allure magazine. I just got to, yesterday I got 100,000 Shopify shops. Those are all really beautiful, wonderful, evidence that you've made right decisions. But one bad decision can really, I've seen one bad decision bring
in
people,
you, in your company?
Not with me.
Okay.
Not with me.
I'm because I was going to ask, what bad decision?
But I've seen, listen, social media is a beast, right?
Right.
You post the wrong thing, cancel culture is real.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen people try to stand up for something and be just smacked down. You have to read the room. You have to be able to balance.
Another skill set.
Yeah.
Is reading the room.
Yeah.
Most people don't know how to.
It's not a skill we've had to develop as young people these days because you're not really in many rooms with other people. You're in virtual rooms, where you can hide. Mm-hmm. But when you're bare naked in front of people, and I don't mean physically no clothes on, but I mean when when they can read your face and your eyes and tone of your voice and
they can see right through you.
Yeah, it's
different. What are some, I guess, tips in terms of scaling your business? How does one properly scale the business, specifically in makeup?
Math. And I told you I was bad at math, right?
I know. I'm all the things that you've been telling me.
Yeah, you would never think, right? No, I've had to learn, I've had some really, really amazing, generous, good-hearted, well-intentioned people around me that have shared and taught me and been patient with me while I learn. And Yeah, I think scaling is math. I think, it's a combination of math and intuition and reading the room. I think that you can have an idea. You're going to have to learn what it's going to cost and how you're going to forecast it and produce it and how that's going to work in your overall budget. Like all these things I didn't know about when I was sitting on a set. These are all the things I've learned in scaling the business. And I think the best thing that I can say to anybody wanting to scale their business is to understand the math of it
How long?
and have good credit.
Didn't we just say that? I was afraid of credit cards.
Yeah.
Till this day.
Oh, I got in such hairy credit bad situation.
too.
It took me years to get out of.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's what I do blame my mom for. I'm like, why didn't you tell me? My mother's like,
They
I didn't know this.
They
She's like,
didn't
"I didn't
know.
I want to ask, I'm not sure if this is like a very intrusive question, so feel free to how long did it take you to make your first $1 million?
That's a really good question because, it's so funny. People that don't know are very confident in throwing numbers out, right? They're like, oh, in your 4th year, you should be making $1 million. Like, really? Okay.
Who said that?
I didn't even take a check for the first 8 years. That's why I was still working as a makeup artist. I was putting everything back into the business.
Yeah.
I would say, when you say that, do you mean like my first $1 million in sales or me making $1 million?
Well, actually, now both.
Yeah. So they're not equal.
Right. You're right. They're not.
They're not equal. Probably about 10 years into the business.
Wow.
Yeah. About 10 years into the business.
They always say your first $1 million is like the hardest thing to make. And then after that is just like maintaining and just kind of making sure it grows.
Who are they?
I don't know. I feel like I'm reading this in social media.
Who are they? I always want to know who they are.
I know. Monica
who are
used
they?
to say that. Monica used to be like, who's they?
Who are they? I need to meet them.
Yeah. Well, that's what they say.
Yeah.
That your first $1 million is the hardest to make.
I'm sure it is for some of them.
For them.
But then seriously, look at some of these influencers now that just make so much money. And, I'm not an influencer. I can't make a judgment on how easy it is for them to make that money. But the speed in which they can make the money is very quick.
Right.
They're not, if an influencer had to wait 10 years to make $1 million, they wouldn't be an influencer.
Yeah.
They would be like, this isn't working.
Yeah. How important is that collaboration between influencers and Beauty Blender and that partnership? And I guess also 2-part question, but who kind of surplus your business in terms of influencer?
Well, first of all, influencers are very influential.
Right.
Right? They're very important.
Period. Exactly.
Yeah, period. They're they inform the masses about you.
Mm-hmm.
Now they can inform good things, they can inform bad things, they can inform very neutral, lukewarm things too. They can inform about you while they mention 10 other things at the same time. So, I would say your relationship, meaning your product, not me, not my Rian Silva relationship, but your product's relationship with whoever is showing it is the most important relationship and has to be the purest, because an influencer is only influencing if people really believe that they like that product, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think when people think that someone's really just getting paid and they're like calling it in, I think we know that,
right.
So it's super important.
Mm-hmm.
It's super important. And what was the other question about that? I have a marketing, team and social media, and we go over planning, and we know what we're launching, and we know who loves us.
Mm-hmm.
We know who doesn't love us. We know our job is to try to make, the people that don't love us. I'm like that annoying person. Like, you really don't love me? Like, why don't you love me? I'm so great. Like, you come love me.
Yeah,
Like, let
yeah.
me show you how great I am. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not that person that if you don't like Beauty Blender, I'm just going to be like, well, you're not a Beauty Blender person. No, I'm going to
No,
convince
you're trying to
you.
find out why.
Yeah. I'm going to show you why you need to
Right.
love me.
I
Yeah.
love that. What do you hope people take away from this interview?
Well, God, I hope they take away that I'm Latina. We haven't even talked about that.
We're gonna, you know what? It's so crazy, but like, it's so funny because people come on the show, and there's a few guests that get so scared because maybe they're Latina, but they don't really identify because maybe they were adopted or they didn't grow, or they grew up with one side of the family, not the other
I
side.
have all that in me too. Like, am I Latina enough? I don't know.
Right.
But
And I'm always like,
I
there's
am
so
what I
much
am.
more to this interview than just being a Latina. Obviously, being a Latina is why we're here, right? But then also like highlighting all the wonderful things that we're doing. I mean,
Yeah, and as that pertains to my career, the advantage of being Latina in the beauty industry is tremendous. And for me, especially at the time, when you talk about timing, the budgets weren't robust for people of color, right? The same that they were for, let's just be honest, call it what it is, white projects, right? And so me looking the way I am, that question, what are you? I always knew was kind of like, where do I put you? Do I put you with the white projects? Do I put you with the ethnic projects like Silva? What is that? Is Silva? That doesn't sound like Mexican and doesn't really sound Irish. Like, what are you, right? So when people are confused about you, it's power. When they don't know what you are or who you are, then you can like make them believe anything about you. And for me, being Latina was a superpower for me because, I'm just going to call it what it is. Like, I had one Black actress tell me, it was unfortunate that I was hired because I wasn't a Black woman. And that she was going to make sure I was fired so that they would hire a Black woman. But I'm like, I'm Mexican. I'm not white.
Right.
Like, I'm not Black enough. I'm not white enough. I'm kind of just in this weird area of what are you? But for me and the timing of it, it was so amazing for me because I was able to learn so much about complexion as a Latina, as knowing, like, my mom never wore makeup. But I had an Aunt Betty who like wore 57,000 pounds of makeup and 4 pairs of eyelashes, and her husband never saw her without makeup. And the whole time they were married, like, she would wake up 4 hours before him and be in the bathroom putting her wigs on and and like, I would see this woman and just be mesmerized by her face. And that was my awareness. And like, being Latina and not having a complexion that was easy to match and learning how to just mix colors for my clients was such the benefit and the expertise that I use every day now when I create complexion products. I mean, it's such a benefit. Like, I wouldn't have had that experience. To say it, a lot of the white makeup artists that, are wonderful and amazing and have great careers, they didn't get that same amazing experience that I got in the same way. It's trendy now to
Right.
people of color, but it wasn't back then. Yeah.
And how important is like representation in terms of like, and I guess just kind of lightly touching on like collaboration and who you decide to partner with in that sense.
Oh my God. It's
like how
so
important
to
is
me.
that, and how, like, do you feel like you have to, when you're in these rooms, because you're in different types of rooms, like, let's just be honest, but do you feel like you have to fight for us?
Not so much anymore.
Okay.
It's getting better.
Okay.
For me, I think it is.
Okay.
My experience is that it's getting better now. You can have someone else here that says it sucks. I don't know. But for me, I see that there is an openness, an interest, and an actual movement to support more than ever. And when you ask about my collaborations, it's absolutely important to me to represent who I am as a Latina in my collaborations.
I love that.
Yeah.
I could go on this interview forever, but I'm pretty sure everyone's looking at me like, girl, there's a time limit. But I do want to hey, if you got the time. I do want to ask some rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Okay. Tell me you're Latina without telling me you're Latina.
I always have hot sauce.
Really? Okay. I like that. I always like, I put hot
I
sauce on
always have
everything.
hot sauce.
I
And I
put hot
always
sauce
need hot
on
sauce.
everything.
Me too.
And growing up, I never liked hot sauce.
Tell me you're Latina without telling me you're Latina. I take pride in the way I look.
Very.
I mean, every Latina I know does.
Mhm.
But how do you say that without saying it? I don't know.
By the way, you look like, well, like, I don't know what fountain of youth you're drinking from, but
Oh, you're so sweet.
give the tips, girl. Give the
Oh.
tips.
Genetics, I think.
Is
I
it?
think, yeah. I think
I
that.
don't know why my brain always is, I'm always wanting to ask, well, does she drink? You know, because some people
Oh
that
my
don't
God,
drink,
I'm
they're
leaving here and having tequila. Are you kidding me? Oh yeah, tequila.
Okay.
Tell me you're Latino without telling me you're Latino. I drink reposado every night. No, I do. I don't know. My dad looked really young. He died at 88, and when he died, he finally aged because he was sick. But he used to pride himself on like, nobody can guess my age. And I used to just roll my eyes. I'm like, you're so annoying, you know. And he was, because my parents divorced when I was about 17 years old, and that was kind of what started me in the odyssey of like going to school and living my life like I lived. But he used to live in this area called Marina del Rey out in California near Santa Monica, and I would just cringe because sometimes I would go to a bar and my dad would walk in.
No way.
And then he would come over and put his arm around me like he was hanging out in the club, right?
Right.
And he would come put his hand or his arm around me, and we didn't look alike at all.
So people thought that was your man.
They thought this old man was like getting handsy with me or something.
They
I'd be
thought you
like,
had a
"That's
sugar
my
daddy or something.
dad! That's my dad!" Oh my God,
Oh
because
my
he
God.
looked really young. And my mom, even she's 87 now. I mean, she looks amazing. She does
God bless.
Pilates 3 days a week. She
My dream.
has 2 new knees, 2 new hips, but she's still going,
She's
driving.
living, yeah.
I mean, they're just energetic, youthful people.
I love that.
I mean, I'll do some Botox.
Girl,
I will do some Botox.
That's my birthday present this year to myself is Botox.
Yeah, I'll do some Botox. I mean, really, then I'm a puss. I keep threatening everybody. I'm gonna get a facelift, but I would never do. I'm so freaking afraid.
No, I actually would do a facelift.
You would?
Yes. If gravity starts to take over,
Well,
absolutely.
it is for me, and I'm too scared.
No, you're fine.
Okay, thank
You're
you.
fine.
I don't know.
What's your favorite Spanish food?
Oh my God. Well, it's Mexican food.
Okay.
And I love my mom's enchiladas. I love our tamales. I love our crispy tacos. You can't find a crispy taco anymore anywhere.
Why?
I don't know.
Where'd they go?
They're
I'm
all
like,
soft.
where did they go?
They're all soft tortillas, which they're nice. But I grew up. Me and my brother would have taco eating contests. Like I love
was a
crispy
thing in your
tacos.
home?
Oh my God! And eating chilies. My grandfather, I think he used to kind of like to torture us.
Yeah.
And he would never talk. He was very quiet. Like Popo, he only said a few words, but he would have a jar of chilies and he would just like give me one, give my brother one, and we'd eat it. He'd eat his, and he would like
With a straight face.
straight face. So we would bite it, and then he would just watch us like cry and be like,
Oh my God.
yeah. Oh my God. That's actually kind of cruel.
Oh, okay. What's one thing you need in the morning?
Coffee.
Me too.
I mean, I don't even need to think about that. Like I need my cafecito and my milk and Splenda. And don't try to control my Splenda intake, people. Okay? There are restaurants that will not give you
Why?
Splenda. I don't know. I don't understand it. Like
Not
they're like,
here in
"Well,
New York. In New York?
here in New York." And they'll be like, "No, we only have stevia."
And
And
you're
I'm
like,
like,
what the fuck is that? Give me
"Stevia?
my Splenda.
I don't want stevia. That tastes nasty."
If you had an opportunity to do the Last Supper with 3 Latinas, who would it be? Dead or alive?
God, that's a really good question. Maybe Celia Cruz.
Love
Yeah.
her.
You know, and this is a funny one because we travel in some of the same circles, but I've never met Eva Longoria. But I just listened to her podcast on Making Space with Hoda
Yeah,
Kotb,
which is
and
amazing.
I really relate to her so much. So I would love to meet her. Mm,
You got one more.
I know who. Who is my third? Um. Okay, this is going to sound weird, but when I read her story too, and Linda Ronstadt. Did you know that she was Mexican?
No.
Do you know who Linda Ronstadt
Yes,
is?
but I had no idea.
Exactly.
How did I not know this?
And now she's lost her voice. She can't sing anymore. Like this whole story about her is really amazing.
Wow.
Like her journey. I would really like to talk to her too because she came up at a time in music where, like it just didn't exist. And she was like one of like Raquel Welch too, like one of
Yes.
these women that kind of had to switch her identity a little bit to succeed. But I grew up very early on listening to her music in California and loving her. I would probably really love to talk to her too. I mean, you're catching me off guard. I know there's more. I want to think about other ones, but those
Okay.
are the three.
Okay. What is this chapter of your life called?
Reckoning. Reckoning. I've been doing a lot of thinking about how I was raised and the things that I didn't realize and how those early things are part of the pattern that you carry on through the rest of your life, Yeah, reckoning. I've been doing a lot of thinking about my childhood.
Really?
Yeah.
Damn, I want to dive deeper in
Yeah.
that. Last one. Finish this sentence. Growing up Latina is?
Growing up Latina is like being an entity of the world, because I will tell you that when I very early in my young adulthood started to travel outside of the US, I started to have so much pride in being Latina. It was here that it was kind of like, oh, you're Mexican, oh, you're a wetback, or like it's so many like derogatory negative things that were said about me or my family or where we were from, because we were in these white communities, right? When I traveled outside of the world, it was like being Latina and being global was just so beautiful. Yeah, it was great.
You're great. I really want to thank you
Oh,
for coming
thank
on the
you.
show. I feel like so many gems were dropped.
Really?
Yes.
I hope so. I don't know.
Yes. Yes. You're amazing. We love you. If you feel like, oh my God, we love you. If you ever wake up and you're like, I don't know, please do it. Continue for us.
Yeah.
Because we're here, we're supporting you, we're rooting for you. Thank you so much. Like, you don't even need to do interviews in your career anymore, and you sat on the show, so thank you. Because your time is precious. Like, let's be honest. You're like,
I hope I can give back in some way.
yeah,
So.
and we appreciate that. I guess like where I want to end it with is what is the next step? What is the future of Beauty Blender, and where is that going next?
Well, like I said, I'm still here, and I'm going to be here for a couple more years for sure.
That's a sure thing.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think about my grandchild, Irie, and I think about what is the world going to be like when she has kids? And what are the stories she's going to be able to tell? She's going to have a big story between me, her mom, her grandfather, football player, and just the family we have. I just, I know that she'll be able to go online or whatever it is then and, pull up me and Beauty Blender in the Smithsonian, and it's going to live there forever for the rest of my family. So whatever happens with it, I just, I hope it can continue to go on and, continue to be an amazing product for people in the beauty industry. But if it all ended tomorrow, I know that it's there. And so I don't know. I don't know what the future. If I had a crystal ball, I could tell you. I don't know.
Well,
but I know what's there now, and I'm grateful.
Thank you so much. Tell everyone. I don't know if you like people following your personal social media, but you can drop it here if you like.
It's just Rianne Silva. I have like 27,000 followers. I don't have very many. Beauty Blender has like almost 4 million, but that's her, not me. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for coming and having me. Thank you for being patient with me.
No, of course. Are you kidding me? Of course. Anytime. Thanks again. Rianne Silva, everybody.
Whoop, whoop.